Hello
Yeah.
there. All right.
Hello.
Right. So I'm just going to do a little update and part two to this video I did a little bit earlier. We'll put a link to it so you can find it. Um, but I'll just go through it quickly again, just to sort of refresh quickly. So we looked at the name of Glewis. This was sort of the way in. Um, we were seeing how that his name probably translates to something like a man from Gloucester and was referring to the tribe that possibly ruled Gloucester and then moved west into the area of Glewising. Now, Geoffrey of Monmouth has a bit of a different story, saying it was named after the Emperor Claudius. Um, and so that was just those arguments. We looked at the name of Gloucester quickly and the various forms it comes in. We looked at the grumpy bugger Claudius and his few names, and then we showed the link sort of outside of Geoffrey of Monmouth through these Frankish names of how we could get from Claudius to something that sounds a lot more like Lewis. Um, so Ludwig, that's an interesting one to remember at the moment, and Lewis. And then we looked at the names of Glewis. I pronounced this as sort of Gliguis or and Cleges last time, but it's actually closer to like Glijuis or Glejuis, and he would have been Sir Cleges or something like that. Clemens is an important one to remember for this one as well. And yeah, and here's the link of the names of Claudius, Glewis, and Gloucester. So, right, just rush through that, but you can go back and watch it. It's a fairly simple argument, so only a short video. So yeah, and this one should be even shorter. But so this is the village of Mousel in Cornwall, and here we've got St Clement's Isle that's just off it here. It's not too far from St Ives, Mousel. So a couple of additions to part one. So this is something that I got from Caleb. He's Caleb House. He's just done a an article that's come out recently, and he's showing a link between Tristan and Conomorus. So this gives us the link between Conomorus and King Mark, and then King Mark back to Tristan. Um, in the mainstream, they often say that we can't really prove a link between King Mark and Conomorus. So his article's really interesting because it does show you can show a genealogical link between the two of them, which also it shows sort of like the right kind of relationship that they are said to have in legend. Um, but the reason I've included it here because it sort of shows um, if you go along with Caleb's argument that these people are probably one and the same, a Meladius and a Malavius, and I thought that was quite interesting because it showed this sort of like D and D to V shift, which could explain this sort of Claudius to Clovis, not D and V. That's something very different and not very nice. So we won't get into that. Another thing I did know at the time but forgot to add is in Latin, V is always pronounced like English. Sorry, in Latin, V is always pronounced like English U, W, sorry, never as English V. So Clovis should really pronounce something like Clois anyway, which is, again, we're getting closer to Clois. Another thing I thought was quite interesting was all these sounds that we come across. So we've got, gl, cl, we've got the chl, which is very much like the Welsh double L, chl. And then also I thought it was quite interesting in French, like so I was pronouncing it Louis, but it's not even really Louis. It's actually like Louis or something like that. There's like a hl sound at the beginning, which the French don't actually, they don't have a separate letter or a couple of letters for that sound. It's just sort of known to be pronounced that way. But I just thought it was really interesting that that hl sound still exists in the spoken name, and just sort of in French in general. Um, not really part of the argument, but thought it was fun. Um, so this is the crux of it. St. Clement's Isle. So this is noted in 1814. Unquestionably, there was a chapel dedicated to St. Clement on the little island off Mousehole, which still bears that name. So um, there's an even earlier reference as well. So Leland, in his journeys around, he recorded it. Mousel, a mile lower, there is a pier. Mousel in Cornish is Porth Ennis, Portus Insulae. So that's quite interesting. So it's sort of quite important for the village because it's known, as the island port. A bay beyond Mousel to Newlyn called Guaverslack, so that's just up the road, and a little beyond Mousel an islet and a chapel of St. Clement's in it. So that's in 1538, writing that there was a chapel there. It's been quite a few storm surges and stuff since, so it's just a rocky like lump now. It's not something you'd really want to live on. But at the time, it could have definitely have had been higher out of the water, out of vegetation on it. Someone could have lived there. Now, we know from the Cornish tradition that St. Clement's here is not the Latin St. Clement's, but rightly identified as either a king of Southeast Wales. Sometimes he's called a king of Cornwall, or sometimes as king of Cernu or prince of Cernu, which, as we've mentioned before, there could be some confusion with Southeast Wales and a place name Cernu. But sometimes he's rightfully identified as the king of Lewissing, and that his son is St. Petroc, and St. Petroc is regularly said to be, one of these princes that gave up his land in South Wales and came to Devon and Cornwall to live the life of a saint. And we see his genealogy showing Pedroc and Glewis. So what have we got? So I don't have a lot of references for Cornish place names and things like that. They're unfortunately not a lot available for free, and I'm not very well off. But I've got one little great, concise little dictionary that's good. And generally, I find that internet sources that I can access agree with it. So St. Clement's Isle only has a 19th century record of a Cornish name, nothing older. But they reckon it's Carn Lajau or Lojau, crag with plants. So this is Carn, like cairn, a rocky outcrop. And Lojau or Losau it means edible plants or herbs, and it's the equivalent of this Welsh word that I'm not going to mangle for vegetables. Lisiau is what it looks like, but I've also heard that C can sometimes be pronounced like a Z sound, which is interesting when you think of this Cornish variation.
Especially with the I next to it.
Yes, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yeah. Okay, so good. That's what I read. So I'm glad that you
Yeah.
can sort of confirm that a bit. It's interesting to note that this mutation, though, isn't very common in Cornish. This is generally how the word comes. So what we see is that there seems to be a separate tradition in the Cornish place name than what we have with the English place name. But I think that crag with plants isn't right, and actually the Cornish name reflects that tradition. And we just have to again go through the name of the Glewis and the things mutations we've noted in order to see that. So one of the first obvious things is to see that the G has been dropped. So just like you get with Kaya Gloy to Kaya Loy, just a quick abbreviation happens loads of times in Welsh, especially with the words jammed together like this. Now the middle W has mutated, and we've got this gwi sound, just as like we get with Clegers and Glesuis. This W here has become a GW or GI, and then gone soft. So this happens with a lot of French words. So from say, I've put an example here. The Latin word for a flood or something is diluvium, and then in the French mutation, it's gone to deluge, right? So we see that this VIU has become a GUI or something, and then mutated again to a J sound. We can see it sort of in the middle in this place. This is a place in Cornwall, and this is pronounced Ludgeon, right? But you've still got the V there, right? So you've still got this. The DG makes this J sound. And then we've got IA, and this is like the suffix on the end. It's just like when we've got Glewis. He's commonly known as St. Cluvias in Cornwall. So it's just this whis sound has just become a via here. So what we have with Carn Logia, we have I've sort of speculated here what it could be. We've got Khan Glovias or Lovias, then goes to Glogias, and then we end up with Khan Logia.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
right. So I think it's just through some mutations that we see quite often with Glewis's name in its various forms, we can actually show that that tradition of St. Clement's Isle, going back at least as far as Leland in 1536, probably older than that, um, we can actually see that the Cornish name does actually support that tradition.
Fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, battery's
Nice work.
running low, so I did that just in time.
Yeah, well done. Excellent.
So that was everything. That was Glewis Part 2. I hope you enjoyed it. And I'd like to hear what you think about that.
Excellent.
Cheers.
Thanks for watching, everybody.